Gemara, today's daf is Friday's Gemara. Daf Gimel. We're up to the base on the bottom of the page. Okay, so we said that when the Mishnah said that dini mamres, you need a court of three, and then it says gzelas v'chabolos, you need a court of three. Now, the question was, aren't they one and the same? So what are we talking about? So we're explaining that dini mamres is excluding loans. And when we say dini mamres shloisha, it's one thing. Dini mamres shloisha, what mamres we're talking about? Gzelas v'chabolos. What about when it comes to loans? It's different. In what way is it different? So Gemara says now, Ulamai. We're up to about 8 lines from the bottom of the page, based on the base. Ulamai. In what way are the commercial law different than the laws of, let's say, theft? That what? You don't need a court of 3 people. Abahu says that he argues with Shmuel. Shmuel says that but if you have a court of 2, it's all right, but it's called a bezin chatzuf, a chuspige bezin. He says you can't even have a bezin of 2. In other words, you need 3. So what's the pshat in the Mishnah? What's the difference between hoydosal voice and gezelis? You need mumchin, people who have smicha and people who know how to learn. But when it comes to loans, you don't need smuchin. You don't need mumchin. You can have ordinary people to be the dayanim. Now the question is Micah Sover. So you have 2 laws. You need 3 dayanim, and there has to be mumchin. Now we learned in Gemara Baba Kama in the early kufs. We had out there machlekes by shomer chinam. It says over there that if the shomer says that I'm potter because this and this happened, and he says there the expression ki huzeh. He says over there the ki huzeh. Ki huzeh means that I'm moided to part of your claim, and I'm disagreeing, I'm objecting to part of your claim. Zeh is this, as if I'm moided, and who is distant, as if I'm not moided. So according to one opinion, a shomer does not have to swear unless he admits to part of the claim, and part of the claim he disagrees with. In other words, he gave me 2 cows or 3 cows, we had all the dinner over there. Mashenk, that's called Ein Eid of Pashas Kosakan. There's no mixture of Pashas. This is where it belongs. However, there are others who say Eid of Pashas Kosakan, which means that this din of the mix is written here but doesn't belong here. In fact, it belongs in the psukim before, which says in kesef talvas amen when it comes to loans. If I have the chutzpah to say I owe you nothing, I'm patur, because ain't other meis b'fnei bal chayva. You are my benefactor. How do I look in your eyes and say you never gave me anything? So we kafir hakol is exempt. But if you made the mixes, you chayiv. So the pasuk here belongs by halva, and by shemer, if you're a kafir hakol, according to Rashi, Tosafos argues, according to shemer tak, even if you're kafir hakol, you have to swear. Why you have to swear? Because you do have the chutzpah. I'm doing you a favor. You're not doing me any favors. I'm doing you a favor. So I have no problem swearing that you never gave it to me. If I have a chutzpah, I have chutzpah. It's much less chutzpah than the case of a halva. So if you hold that 8 of Pasha is kosev counseling, most like this. So remember, 2 dinim. You need 3 judges, and that you need mumchin. Where do we learn the whole din of mumchin from? From Shaimin, because there it uses the word Elokim. Every time it talks about judges, it uses the word Elokim. Elokim means not just an ordinary hedyot judge, it's somebody who is learned, smicha, vested with the power of Elokim, of Torah. And that's where we learn the whole idea of mumchin. And because it says 3 times Elokim, we also learn from there the 3 dinim of judges. So if you learn that everything it says by Shem that applies to Hagdaz V'Halvois, Eid of Pasha Kazokan, so then we know that you also need 3 judges, each mumchin. And if you don't hold Eid of Pasha Kazokan, so therefore you don't need mumchin because Elokim has nothing to do with Halva, nor would you need 3 people either. So the Gemara is like this. Microsoft, Ada Pasha Kazakan, that what's written by Shem belongs to Lavar, then Lebain Mumchin. Because just the same place you learn 3 judges, you learn also Din Mumchin. Elokim, they're referred to, they're called. And Ikasov ain't Ada Pasha Kazakan. No, don't learn Mumchin from there because that's limited to Shemim. Then how do you have to have 3 judges at all? And you said by Hadas al you do need judges, but you don't need Mumchin. Gzelis v'chabolos, you need judges and Mumchin. But when it comes to Halvos and Hadas, you don't need. How'd that work? That's not a problem. Really, we hold 8 of Parsha Kosakan, which means you do need 3 judges by Hadot, and you would need 3 mumchin, but the din is you don't. Now, why not? You knew the mumchin. You know why you don't need mumchin? You know why we decided to differentiate and make it by commercial loans? You don't have to have mumchin. So the Rab Chanina said, Rab Chanina, the var Torah, according to the Torah, echadin mumnas, be'echadin fashas, b'dirisha v'chakira. There he talks about interrogations and then being inquisitive. Yes, you should ask every witness that comes in. You should interrogate them. Work it all out. Shenemer says, Mishpat echad yilechem. That the law should be the same for everybody in every sphere, in every discipline. So why don't you need disha v'chakira over here? That means that we don't want people will start to make it too hard. If you're going to interrogate, what happens? I lend them money, and this guy's going to. I'll get two agents, and you could trip them up. And not everybody is so cluey that won't make mistakes. And so why should I jeopardize my money? We want to make life as easy as possible for them. So just like we remove the law of this based on Rab Chanina, we're also going to say, what? You don't need mumchin. It's difficult to find dayanim and mumchin. We're going to make it easy. For hados of us, any three people is good enough. Now we know one of the differences between having a proper bezin or not is if the bezin makes a mistake. As a result of that, you lose money. A bezin has like professional indemnity. And therefore, but if it's a hedyatis who are not qualified to be a bezin, if they make mistakes, there's no professional indemnity there. But now that you're telling me that we made a special takana, you can use ordinary people to be dayanim, they should also have that professional indemnity as well. If they made a mistake, they shouldn't pay. So my answers, and the Shemrei Tova will go later, that the truth of the matter is even the regular people don't pay unless nosam and nosam bayad. You don't really pay unless you were actively involved. Otherwise, you made a mistake in the sack. But they're the ones who carry it out. You're only a chagoyim. You're not really chayiv. Anyway, but Elamiat is Koshkin out to Mildel must know because I make it. Then if you're going to immune the judges, then this bar will go to some judges who don't know what they're doing, and they'll rule against me and they'll make mistakes and there's no responsibility. So the lender will be even more scared. So therefore, it's all part of the takana that these judges, if they take it on to judge, they have to have a sense of responsibility, which means it's going to force them to either learn the dinim or to consult before they give out a psak. So at least the Malva has a little confidence that the right outcome will happen. No, they're not to be mumchin, but there's no professional indemnity for them. If it's not mumchin, then they are responsible. They make a mistake, which means it's going to force them to exactly. Says the Gemara. So why do you have to then tell me? You told me, Rabavu, that the Mishnah is talking about only gzelas v'chavolos, and the Mishnah, you're supposed to read the Mishnah, dini mamanis, as if then it says, and what is it? Gzelas v'chavolos, and we're talking about three mumkin. I could easily learn the Mishnah. It's two separate cases. Dini mamanis means loans, and there the din is three judges, but no mumkin. Gzelas v'chavolos is a different din. Three judges who are mumkin. Isn't that easy to have way to learn the Mishnah? And I'll prove it to you. Two different dinim. Dinim mamanis leisha had yates, three ordinary people. And learn the Mishnah that way. Number one. Number two, how can you learn your way? Shloisha lami. If it's one case, it says dini mamas b'shloisha, b'shloisha. If you're telling me that dini mamas b'shloisha, and then it says mahem, what is it? What's the second shloisha for? Elam Rabbi, you're right. So Rabbi learns takip shat in the Mishnah. There's two separate dinim. Tartik tani. It's two separate dinim. Dini mamas is three, but no mumchin. Three with mumchin. Mishum the Rab Chanina. Because of Rab Chanina, faces over here and all the Rishonim have a big machlekes when we say in order not to avoid, we don't want to close the door. We have no tradition of a chakira when it comes to loans, and then the same thing applies to all commercial things. A gift, a ksuva, the eidim that come in is no tradition of chakira. But what about gzeil chabolos? Is the tradition of a chakira over there? And faces brings the two opinions whether gzeil chabolos we don't want to have tradition of a chakira to make it more difficult for Ganovin to get away with it, because they know that, if anybody saw them, even though they trip up, it doesn't matter. There won't be any Disha v'chakira. Or other Pshantays, do have Disha v'chakira, because since we're learning, you need mumchin, you follow all the dinim. And when I worried about in Elos Del so much, because the Nigniv is going to work very hard to make sure that he wins at the end. Anyway, the Gemara continues. Rabbi Acha says, he holds the machlekes, but he holds that one dayan is sufficient. Shneimar, but tzedek tishbet amisecha, just as you should. It's all written in singular form. So one judge is technically sufficient, and therefore hados v'havas is different than gzelu chabalas. Gzelu chabalas you learn for Shem b'three. Hados v'havas. So now you said we need three also because eight of Pasha Koskan. No, all you need Mahatayt is one. Tzedek tishbet amisecha, and the Rashi holds, and they don't believe in eight of Parshas Koskan. You don't need three at all. Taisha holds they do believe, but the pasuk tzedek tishbet overrides that. All you need is one. Or does love us, yeah. And the reason why you need the Rabbana say you need three because not everyone knows how to learn. So what's helping you have three? You'll have three ladies. So people sit in the corner and don't, definitely somebody there who knows how to learn. That there's a machlekes and showing you exactly what the definition of gomer is. Does gomer mean gomer v'savir or just gomer? But the Rashi just says here, it's definitely he must have been around the traps, and he would have heard, some of the laws. He has an idea of how to deal with these things. Again, if you're sanctioning them, then there should be a proper business, professional indemnity. If you're going to give them professional indemnity and they don't know much, it'll encourage them never to learn. We have to discourage them from being able to lay together. Go make an effort and try to find out what the correct thing is. At the end of the day, what's the difference if we hold that Mahataydi you need three because Erev Parshat Kosokan, or Mahataydi you need one, but the Rabbanan said you need three. Either one's all right. So no, the difference is Ikibnai Dama Shmuel. Shmuel said, and we'll learn later on. That's Naim Shadonu the name Din. If two Dayani B'De'evet Paskin, it's a valid psak. Elish and Nikru Bezin Chotzf, but they call it Chutzpah Bezin. Is Le Rava less than Shmuel? Rava holds you need Mahatayda three. There's no such thing, but the evidence is good. Rava easily Shmuel. Rava you can hold Mahatayda you need one. It's only the Rabbana you need three. So, but the evidence is two. You call the Bezin Chotzu. Fighting about we go through a Mishnah, case by case. Nezek v'chatzi nezek. Why do you have to highlight nezek when you just a chabalus? Nezek hain chabalus. What's nezek? Chabalus is when you hurt somebody, and nezek is when the animal hurts somebody. What's the difference? Why count it separately? So the Gemara should go by Mishnah chatzi nezek because by nezek you have also chatzi nezek as well. Toninami nezek shalom. Therefore it says also nezek shalom. Says the Gemara, Chatzi Nezik, Nami Chabalos. What are you telling me? Chatzi Nezik also. Okay, the first three times he's a tam, but he hurt a person. We don't follow Rabbi Kiva who says that a shayr who hurts a person even the first time you pay the Maisa Nezik Shalom. But it's a different Nezik. There's two kinds of Nezikin. One is Mammon, you're paying for the value, and that's Gezelis v'Chabalos. And then you have the Knas. The Knas is Chatzi Nezik Knas. Therefore you have Nezik. And you have Chatzi Nezik. And that's why we counted. So we wanted to learn Chatzi Nezik. What's so important? Isn't that included? No. Chatzi Nezik is Knas. So we have Nezik and Chatzi Nezik. So we had a machlekes up to in Baba Kama where the Chatzi Nezik is mum. In other words, do we say a stam animal is wild, you should be more careful, so your responsibility? Or do we say stam animals are docile and they're not wild, and therefore if it happens, it's not your fault, but a Knas in the future, make sure you're more alert. Is Hanichel Mandala Pali can also is a Knas. Therefore, the Mishnah want to tell you also to separately highlight Chatzi Nezik, and once you have a Chatzi Nezik, you tell me another show. Al Rebbe once defended the people saying about Bashet, always the Chassidus never learn Nigla. So he went over to them and he told them a 3-hour pulpul and in Palganiska Knasa, and the opinions of Palganiska Knasa, and they were way over their heads, and they said, that's the only Palganiska Knasa. Now I'm ready to give Palganiska Knasa, and they said, enough. So that was the pulpul he gave over this here, or the Gemara and Baba Kama. Ella, I did the Kabbalah, Mr. Tashlumi Kaif, the Tashlumi Abba Chemeh. You're talking about all these other Knasim. So therefore, if you talk about all of these, not because this person holds Palgas and money, because we're talking about things which are more or less than the money that you paid. When you're a kafel, you're paying double the principal. 4 or 5 times, you're paying 4 or 5 times the principal. So he says also the flip side, Chashinezek, we pay less than the principal. The moment, even She'ena, Mishtalim, but these are all classified as money that is not the principal, more or less. Well, we're talking about Chashinezek, the moment so also Chashinezek, which is not the principal. It's less. No. It's Risham Rosh is an expression which means Rosh is the initial value, the principal. We call Keren. You might call them Shtal Barosh, the principal. So if we also mention Chatzinezek, the Mama She'ena Mishtal Barosh, you're not paying the full amount. The idea that Kabbalah, Mr. Chatzinezek, that's why the Mishnah mentioned it. The next case is Shloisha Minah. As the Gemara says, look, the Gemara now asks, we're talking about Shloisha. Interestingly, the Gemara starts all this. It should have started with Shloisha Minah. That's the first thing the Mishnah says in Imam Shloisha and across the board. How do you know 3 judges? Where does the Torah say 3? And this will come to what Jim you asked yesterday, this thing of Bez and Shackle. Says the Pasuk, but again, everything is from Shemim. Says the Pasuk again, we don't find the Ganef, so the Balabais is potter if you the stone. So the Nikrev is the Shemim. The Nikrev Bal Habayis Elakim, you bring the Balabas to Elakim. Who's Elakim? The judge. And that's really Mumchel because it's called Elakim. Hadikanech, so all you know there's one. And then it says that on everything that happened, Advar Pesha, Shavachamar, he has to swear on all of these things. And then he says, Asher Yemakir Ad Elakim. Yavid Vashne. They both will come present themselves before Lakim. That's number 2, judge number 2. And then it says at the end of the pasuk, Hadikan Shnaim. That very pasuk says Asher Yashin Lakim, the one that the king will find guilty. That's a 3rd judge. Asher Lakim Hadikan Shnaim. Even Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Yehuda said no. The first Lakim in the previous pasuk you can't use to a drasha because we have a rule when the Torah has to tell you the idea of going to a judge. It's not to tell you numbers. It's not extra at all. Tchilas you don't darshan. Elo Ad Lakim Yavid Vashne. How to get 3? The second time it says Lakim, that's 1. Asher Yashin Lakim guilty is 2. Then Bezin Shakel, you can't have a Bezin of 2, so you have 3. Hadikan Shloisha. So first thing Mother says, so name of you want to say Bedoshin Tchilas that this principle, whether the Torah says something a number of times, whether we can count the first time as a number or not, that's what they're arguing. The Marsava Doshin Tchilas. Rabbi Yeshua says that you do Dashin the first time around. The Marsava and Rabbi Yehuda says ain't Doshin Tchilas, you don't Dashin. Is that true? Because generally we say that we do dash chilas, even though sometimes we say in the Gemara, and we'll see later that there's a machlekes, but here we'll assume that they agree. So we're line up. Kuli alma ain't dash chilas. Everyone holds you don't dash in the first pasuk. Rabbi will say, but this time is different. Now why? Imke name a krov and nika balabais ala shayfet. Why say lakim? Say a shayfet, which is the normal way. By saying a lakim, the Torah is saying, I want you to count this as one of the judges. Maya lakim shma'alam yana. In addition to telling you have to go to a judge, I want you to count as one of the 3 judges. But Rabbi Yehuda, what's he going to say with that? Lishna the almanaka. That's how people talk. Man, you have a contested story. Go to the judge. But Rabbi Yehuda, now I want to ask a question. Jimmy asked. But Rabbi Yehuda, Leslie Bezdin, Rabbi Yehuda doesn't hold that you need an odd number. He needs 3 psukim. Even if you had 2 psukim, and that's 2 judges, obviously you need a 3rd judge to make sure you have an odd number. But Tanya, it says in the pasuk, lintes achar rabim, that you should follow after the plural, after the majority. Lahatas hatoida It says asay lecha bezin. You should always have a majority, so you can have a majority. So the Gemara says, right now the Gemara thinks that Yehuda holds you don't need an odd number by Bezin. How do we know? Exactly what Jimmy asked yesterday. Dama Shivim, he says, how many Sanhedrin Daf were there? 70. The Yehuda says Shivim, but only 70. Says the Gemara, because he doesn't count Moshe Rabbeinu. Even though the Gemara Sukkah, the Shayim point out, he said there was 71 in Shul Alexandria, the giant shul, they raised flags. There was 71 seats Keneged Sanhedrin, when he says only 70. So everyone agrees that Moshe Rabbeinu was in charge of Sanhedrin. The question is, was he the Av Bezdin, or was he higher than that? He was on top of the Bezdin, but he didn't have a vote. When do we? And the Mephoshim will explain why he didn't have a vote. Because then nobody would dare give another opinion, and they won't wait to hear what Moshe Rabbeinu had to say. This way, everyone can speak freely and give their opinion. And that's why Maschilim and Atzad, you always start from the smallest. Rabbi Yehuda says, Shibim, Rabbi says, no. When does Rabbi Yehuda say in even numbers going up is Sanhedrin Daf? Only the Sanhedrin Daf. You see, it says, Kroi, because they have Sukkim. But all the best, of course you need an odd number. How's it work? Maybe he holds all but the din and don't need an odd number. But now we learned. Actually, the very Rabbi Yehuda. We learned, it says, Smichas as a Kainim. It says that when this Canaan puts a hand on the par Helam Davashal Tzibur, Barifas, Eglabishleisha, the Shimon. Rabbi Yehuda says, how many? We need 5 judges, Chamisha. And we'll say later on, in my time in the Boches Svara, it said the Samchu is Shnayim, Zikne is Shnayim, Samchu is 2, and Zikne is 2, and the Ein Bezin Shakel. And how does it, oh, it knows 4. How do you get to 5? So Rabbi Yehuda says, the Ein Bezin Shakel, you can't have an even number. You have one more. How do you can't have 5? So we see clearly Rabbi Yehuda holds, you need an odd number. Sanhedrin Daf is different. Says Gemara, Rabbi Yeshua different. Rabbi Yeshua followed Rabbi Yehuda and goes a step further. The Rabbi Yehuda b'Sanhedrin Daf less than Habashah Bedin Islay. Rabbi Yehuda holds everywhere else you need an odd number. Rabbi Yeshua b'Shah Bedin not mean less than you don't need an odd number. And if you have an even number, you bring more judges on then, and to get an outcome. Well, a high lintas, my avidlay, according to you don't need an odd number. What do you do? Lintas, mukilabedin the fushes. He said that pasuk is talking about when it comes to matters of life or death. How do you know? It says lerois. When it comes to money matters, if it's bad for you, it's good for somebody else. So you can't say it's universally rois. The only thing which is universally rois is murder. Who gained from it? Ayid was killed. This guy is going to get killed now. The perpetrator. Aiden Zaymin, they'll get killed. Nobody wins over here. So it's a rois for everybody. So the pasuk is in fushes. But the Imam's law, so he holds din fashas a majority, but not din Imam's. So maybe din Imam's he holds, not that you're bringing up somebody else on, maybe you need everyone to agree. That's what we think right now. If you need everyone to agree, it says clearly later on. If two people judges say he's chayiv, and one judge says he's innocent, it's all the way around. Two say he's innocent, and one says he's chayiv, or the other way around. And the din is you follow majority. New name it like Rabbi Yeshua. Because the Yeshua holds you don't need a majority. He holds it has to be unanimous. And yet it says the majority is good enough. Afilu teim Rabbi Yeshua. Yeah, Rabbi Yeshua agrees that majority, you follow a majority. But a bezin can be an equal number, and then you just bring more people if you need. How do I know that? If you follow majority. Ma'isa b'kavochem b'din fashas. He makes a kavochem. Ma'din fashas the chamidi. Din fashas which are so stringent. Amar Achman, you yourself agree. It says lintas. It says lintas, which means that you follow majority. Zilbos aruba din imamnes l'koloshkein. Surely by din imamnes you follow the majority. Now, all the Rishonim, and one of the most difficult conundrums in halacha is that din nefashos, it says right here, is stricter than imamanis. Yet we know that by din imamanis we say ein holchin b'maman achar rov. Majority is not compelling, but by din nefashos we always go after it, always. And most people make a mistake in the date of toy bu'ur de yach we hang up later. They thought this guy said having business. This guy said giving this. Most people don't know exactly what his chedesh is, and we're going to kill him based on the most, a majority. And yet, what is Kabul? So Taisus here wants to learn that when, different than everybody else, than other places he learns, that when do we say, Ein holchim b'maman acharayv, when it's a very weak rayv. Rubel Radiyas, they buy the animals, most people buy it for plowing, you give them a very wild animal, that's a weak rayv. But when it's a strong rayv, like most people don't know, it seems like most people didn't know, or when it's a strong rayv, there's no difference in the fashion than in mammals. And the Chassid brother wrote a whole sefer called Kundas HaSeikin, which is back to Mishpach base, trying to resolve this conundrum that by din imamanis we don't go after Rav, and by din nefashos we do. How do you explain that? Five. Why 5? When you have 5, the din it finishes off with 3. Majority we follow majority, which is 3. No, Rebbe holds. We'll see in a minute. Why he says 5, we'll see in a minute. Telling you about what's wrong with it? All you need is a majority. So start up with 3 and you have majority 2. What do you need with 5? Gemara understands that when we say 3 judges, not to start the din Torah, is to conclude. The psak should be based on 3 lakims, which is a 3 dayanim. What? It means the end. Mocked them. Every time this expression, we have it all over Shas. That's his style. Following your logic, if you have to finish with 71, you should have 141. And according to your logic, which is 23, you should have released 45. And who said maybe Taka? Because the pasuk says, Hashem said to Moshe, gather me 70 people. And the question is on whether Moshe is included in number 71. Mishas Asif from the beginning should be only 70. And then V'shaftu Eido V'tzila Eido in the beginning when they're judging. Nami, Mishash Shvitas Eido. You need 10, the 23 people. Not the conclusion. Mishas Krei here also 3 V'nikr. When you approach, it should be 3 Elikims. Elahai the time of the Rebbe. So why does Rebbe say 5? I said the pasuk Asher Yashiyun Elikim, plural. Yashiyun they. So we're talking about, even though it says Elikim, it's 2 Elikims. Today, Nemer Elikim Lamata. It says Asher Yashiyun Elikim, and the Nemer Elikim Lamaila. And the pasuk right there, a few words before that says Ad Elikim Yovid Vashneim. And we equate the 2. Is Ma Lamata Shnai Lamata Shnai. Just like the bottom, there's 2 tops those 2. And since there's not an equal bezin, you add 1 more. Harikan Chamisha. You have to have 5. But Rabbanon, what Rabbanon do? Yashi'an ksiv. They say don't look at the way we read it. Look at the way it's written, and it's written in singular. Therefore, you don't have to have five. You only have to have Shinol Kim is only. It says Yashi'an. We follow the Mercedes. Go pause for a second. I'm